and welcome to the first panel discussion of the Men's Week of Family Fest 2020. I am your host and moderator, Cornelius Bartlett, and I want to introduce our three very esteemed panelists, starting with Jamal Midas, Pastor Jamal Midas. Pastor Midas, good evening.
Blessings, good evening to all.
We also have with us Pastor Derek Ward. Pastor Derek, good evening.
Good evening to you, Cornelius, and to the fellow panelists, and to all those who are joining us online this evening.
And we have our third panelist is Mr. Tony Olton. Welcome, Tony.
Thanks, Cornelius. Thanks to Family Fest. Good to see you guys.
Okay, well, the topic we have to discuss is so critical that I don't want to waste any time. I just want to jump right in. So let's have a look at what we're going to talk about this evening. We're going to talk about love, respect, honor. What does that mean to a man? As men, we are commanded to love our wives, while the emphasis is on women to respect and for children to honor their parents. While we understand that these roles will overlap, it's healthy for each member of the family to always express them towards each other. Everyone has varying interpretations of love, respect, and honor, but based on their background and frame of reference and worldview, that can vary. Therefore, there must be a common standard that is not only spiritual and moral, but one that showcases its fruits by its very nature. In trying to bring about change, we tend to lean towards the false sense of reality that we have created for ourselves. In resolving this issue, should we not lean towards absolutes, which are based on spiritual and moral principles, which by extension results in a value system which benefits our relationships, both with God and our fellow man? A proper definition of love, honor, and respect, matched by an understanding by all parties concerned, can bring about much needed healing within the institution we call family. Gentlemen, love, respect, honor. What does that mean to a man? And I'm going to start the ball rolling with Pastor Jamal. Pastor Jamal, give us some definition as far as you know about love, respect, and honor. What does it really mean to a man?
Praise the Lord. I want to thank you all for having me here this evening, and to just give you a brief definition in terms of what that really means to a man. And I would share from the perspective of a young man, amen. And just to give a quick definition of what love really means, it has been defined as an intense feeling of deep affection, pleasure for something. And we all know based on research that there are many different types of love. And while I was looking at this word love, I realized that according to ancient Greek, that there are actually 8 types of love. We all know about the agape love, which speaks of the unconditional love that we experience from God. Then there's the eros, which speaks of the romantic love. We have the philia, the affectionate love, the philautia, the self-love, which can also be positive or negative. We know of the storge, which speaks of familiar love, progma, enduring love, ludus, playful love, and mania, obsessive love. And when we are speaking of love, we have to realize it comes in many different forms, and it can take on many different definitions. So when someone can say to you, as a man, I love you, you have to understand, is that person referring to agape love, or they're referring to eros love, because it can mean many different things. Now, if we had to look at respect in terms of giving a definition, if feeling of deep admiration for someone or something. So if I'm saying to you that I respect you as an individual, I am saying that I admire you. There is something about you that I see, that I value, that I also appreciate. Now, as I look at the word honor, a definition of this word, it speaks of high respect, esteem, or revere. it speaks of to esteem something highly. So these words can really work closely together: love, respect, and honor. And one of the root words, the underlining words that you can find in three of these words is that word esteem, which actually means to hold high regard. And I would start off with that definition.
Thank you, Pastor Jamal. Pastor Derek, what is your take?
Well, I mean, Jamal made a very hard case for us to follow after, as he has so aptly defined the concepts. And I would just add to what Jamal is saying by explaining that, yes, when we speak of love, we have to understand the intent behind the speech. Because in the English language, love is love. You know, we don't have all these 8 different words to represent the concept of love. And therefore, unless we are able to read the intentions of one's heart, we may not fully understand what they're saying when they say they love. So this evening, I'm hoping that as we are speaking, that we'll be able to bring some sort of clarity that in even telling someone you love them, you need to be able to understand and articulate what you really mean by you love them. Is it a deep affection for sexual love? Is it God's love, that unadulterated, pure love of God? Is it the brotherly love? You know, we speak of Philadelphia. When we go to Philadelphia in the US, it is the city of love, but that's talking about the brotherly love. So I would say that we need to be able to clarify this evening as we speak in our limited language, the English language, the intents of the heart. And I'm hoping later on that I can look at the concept of love and respect as portrayed in the book of Ephesians. And I think that's going to be a key text for us, because I do have a way of reflecting on love and respect, especially in marital relationships. So I'm ready to jump in as soon as the discussion gets going. So I'll pause right there for now.
Okay, thank you, Pastor Derek. Tony, let's hear from you.
Yeah, so great. So for a long time, I would have subscribed, or have subscribed, to that Greek variation on love, philia, agape, eros, etc. But I've branched out and I've had a pretty deep study in something called emotional intelligence. And so love for us in an emotional intelligence context is a combination of 2 other emotions: joy and trust. Joy says that I have something, I'm experiencing something or someone that I want to keep, I want to hold, that it provides me some measure of pleasure. Trust says that that thing that I have, I don't only want to keep it, but I want to embrace it. We tend to get caught up with love just being an emotion. For me, I'm at that place in my life now where I see love as an expression of some moment, something, some person, some experience that brings me pleasure, and I want to hold on to that pleasure. And the more I think about it, I begin to understand what people mean when they say that they have fallen out of love. When they have fallen out of love, one of those 2 things is missing. They're not getting pleasure from the thing, from the person, from the experience, and they no longer want to embrace, bring close to themselves that thing, person, or experience. So that's the take I'm going to put on this whole question of love. Are we in a place where we're experiencing some measure of pleasure, whatever it is and to whatever degree, around the thing, experience, or person? And do we want to bring that thing, experience, or person, do we want to get closer to it? But I'll talk more about that, so as to give a broader understanding as to how we got there.
Thank you, Tony. So I heard some definitions, and I heard some very interesting theory from you there just now, Tony, where you talk about the pleasure, joy, and the trust.
Yeah.
Now, the fact of the matter, I want this discussion to go towards in the context of the fact that families are being destroyed every day, not only in Barbados, but in the world. And it would appear to me as though when people go to the altar, for example, because you have all kinds of relationships, you have marriages that are official, you have people living in a house for years together. But what is happening is that people say, I love you to each other today. And then 10, 15 years down later, 2 children, you find that the woman decides she no longer loves the man, and the man decides, or the man decides he no longer loves the woman. Now, I don't think that there's a common understanding among men and women. So you want someone, for example, like Derek, Pastor Derek, I think I would throw this one at you. What are some of the misunderstandings or misinterpretations of love that you could help to shed some light on as to why so many persons who love today, tomorrow they hate the person that they loved 5, 10 years ago?
Well, thank you, Cornelius. I would tend to jump off from where Tony left off just now, because there are lots of people who speak about having love for one another. They love each other, they want to get married. And basically, they're basing it on these 2 concepts, the joy and the trust that they feel in the presence of that person. And though that is good, and we expect that should happen, I think most people who jump into relationships, and they tend to use the word love so early in a relationship. People talk about love at first sight. And I so love this person. What you may do, you may love how you feel around that person. You may love what the experience are doing to you, and you mistake the feelings of what you're experiencing for feelings for that particular person, and therefore you get married on that foundation of the how you felt in that person's presence. But when the joy, when the pleasure is no longer there, or what stimulated you in the beginning is no longer there, then you feel, well, I fell out of love. I hate this person. I am of the opinion that we cannot move from total love to hate in a situation. We may come to a place where we recognize, okay, we just can't function together, but I can't hate that person. So I would say, if a foundation is wrong and you didn't drill down in the foundation of your relationship from early to make sure that you had a good foundation, you had good concrete, you had good steel, and that what you call love was really love. Because if we use the Bible's definition found in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, it says love is patient, love is kind, and it starts to go down that road. And I would often say to people, when you jump up, you say you love this person and you're all in love, line up what you are saying against 1 Corinthians chapter 13, starting at verse 4. And that's just is what you feeling right now? Is it undergirded by patience? Is it kind? Is it all? And if you can't tick off yes to all these things, that'll say, I don't think that what you have is love as yet. You may have lust. You may have, as Jamal said earlier, you may have a deep affection for, but it may not be love as yet.
Thank you, Derek. Pastor Jamal, I want you to speak to a young man. As a young man, what would you say to a young man who believes that he is in love and he wants to get married? Or maybe I should put it this way. A young man gets married and then he starts to feel disrespected by his wife. He starts to feel as though he's not being honored by his wife. Shed some light to us on what you think might be happening there as a pastor, because I'm sure even though you're a young pastor, I'm sure that you would have had lots of interaction with young married men or young men that contemplated marriage. Speak to us, Pastor.
I would say in a situation like that, Cornelius, persons change. The person that you would meet, let's say at age 25 when you got married, may not necessarily be the same person at age 27. Different circumstances would cause that person to change. And sometimes we go, I'm speaking futuristically, sometimes we go into marriage with the expectation as a young man that this person is going to remain the same. The person's physical stature is going to remain the same. The person is going to be speaking to me the same way. They're going to be respecting me the same way, because that's the honeymoon phase that you're currently experiencing. So, when you now meet someone, or or you're not going steady, or you just got married, everything is ticking, you know, emotions are high, everything is raging, and you feel excited, but not realizing that when, as you would say, life happens, things begin to change. And I think sometimes as young men is that we become frustrated in those moments. And a wise man once defined frustration as unfulfilled expectation, because you're expecting your other half, your spouse, to still do things. And when they're no longer doing those things, all of a sudden you become frustrated. And sometimes silence begins to creep into the marriage. And I always believe before you hold a grudge, you hold a conversation, be able to effectively communicate with your spouse. Okay, honey, why are you no longer doing the things anymore that you once did? And sometimes by having a simple conversation, your spouse is able to open up to you to say, well, you know, you stop doing certain things, or I may feel disrespected by you. So based on how you treat me, that is how I am now responding. So as a young man, you may not realize that you have changed in terms of how you are treating her, or how you are responding to her, how you're respecting her. So she's now just feeding off and responding to based on the love and the affection that you are giving to her. And many times you would hear things mostly coming from the female. They would say things such as, you should understand me, or you should know what I like, or you should know what upsets me. And sometimes they remain silent, expecting the husband, the young man, to always know what is wrong with them, or always know why they have changed, instead of having a conversation to say, okay, these are the things that we need to address. These are the things that I like. These are the things that I dislike. That comes down to understanding now the love languages, because sometimes as a young man, based on how you were, you're brought up, see, based on the environment that you were grown in, your love language may be different, and you may be expressing your love to that person based on how you want to be loved, not realizing that that is not their love language. Their love language may be physical touch, it may be quality time, words of affirmation, the giving of gifts, and your love language may be, let's say, giving of gifts, but the person's love language may be quality time. So now you feel that you are doing a good job, you're purchasing these quality gifts, and your spouse is still unhappy. The young lady you're dating is still unhappy, because you're just coming and dropping the giftings and you're going, but then you're not spending that quality time. So I believe having an open conversation from time to time is always healthy, to see, okay, where have we gone wrong? What can we correct so that we can move forward and begin to build as a young couple?
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Jamal. Tony, I want us to look again, because we're talking about how these three things affect men. Because there are lots of men right now listening to us that are thinking to themselves, you know, I have had it. I personally have seen men I've spoken to men who have filed for divorce because they feel totally disrespected. Tony, I know you do a lot of workshops in terms of motivation and inspiration and all of that. And I know you would have done a lot of research on this together with Derek as well. But I want you to tell us if love, honor, and respect are separate, or if they're part of one party. And I want you to tell us from your experience, which one of these elements, love, honor, or respect, which is the most overarching growth that men are having within their relationships with their wives and spouses?
Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, thought I was muted. To answer that, I probably have to go back to the question that you asked of Derek. And the comment that Derek made. He talks about, 2 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later, we discover that we're no longer in love. But you have to go back and understand what you were experiencing and what you described at the front end. And I'm deliberately shaping this in the context of emotional intelligence, because emotions drive people. When you say that you're in love, that initial contact and those initial days, weeks, whatever it is, something is happening on the inside of you that is giving you pleasure. Here's the challenge though. Emotions, the original raw emotion, only has a life of 6 seconds. I'm not talking a year, 2 years of marriage, 3 years of marriage. Whenever you feel that thing that you call love, that only has a life of 6 seconds. In other words, emotions come and emotions go. So if we're talking about sustaining ourselves in a relationship, marital, family, community, if you're talking about sustaining ourselves in a relationship, we can't get so caught up with the emotion of love. I refer to scripture that says that greater love hath no man than a man laid down his life for his friends. That love is really something about a sacrifice, giving up something of yourself. And scripture says nothing greater than actually giving your life. So if we're going to talk about love, have we ever gotten to a place in our lives? Have we ever gotten to a place in our relationships where we are prepared to sacrifice, if not our full selves, something of ourselves? And the answer is that for most of us, it's a very difficult thing to do. That at our base nature, we are very selfish creatures, or we look after self first.
You read my mind.
And pardon?
You read my mind. I was just going to ask you that.
Right. And so when I get married, when I'm in a relationship, do I really function out of that place where I'm prepared to give up something, whatever that thing is, so that we can be whole? And most of us don't get there. And if we get there, it is spasmodic. It is from time to time. The challenges can be sustained over a long period of time. The longer you can sustain that, I think that is where the respect and honor comes. It is not by chance that scripture says that husbands are to love their wives and the wife is to honor the husband. It's not by chance. So that, life is sowing and reaping. Life is give and take. So that if we honor scripture, what we're saying is, if we can sufficiently give of ourselves, sustain that over time, then the honor and the respect that we so badly, so desperately crave is a natural outcome. So that that sacrificial giving, that preparedness to give up some part of self to some way, in some degree, sets up the conditions for the honor and for the respect.
A question before you come off of you, Tony. So the main responsibility on setting the tone is on the men then. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
I honestly believe that.
Because I want to go now to Derek, and I want to ask Derek, I know who has a lot of experience in counseling. I want to ask you, Derek, for a man who is feeling disrespected, because I know disrespect has a lot of faces. I remember I was in a church setting once, and we had a vigorous discussion. My wife was there, and my wife disagreed with something that I said, and she was making her point, and she was very strong about her points, and I enjoyed it. But when I left, a young brother said to me, Cornelius, your wife opposed you seriously in that discussion. You don't feel upset? I said, no, I enjoyed it. He said, but that was really disrespectful for her to oppose you like that. I said, no. I said, she is a human being that is very intelligent. And I really enjoyed hearing how she was able to stand up for herself against the point I was making. So Derek, I want to ask you this question. I want to touch on that, but I also want you to tell us, what does this disrespect look like generally? And I also want you to tell us, what is the number one, out of these three, what is the number one complaint that men are having within the relationships in the home?
Okay.
Either
number
one
complaint. Yeah, number one complaint. I don't think that I've encountered a man who would say that he wouldn't use the terminology, I'm not being respected, because he may not be able to articulate that. He may tell you how he feels, and then you will say, okay, what you are experiencing, what you're feeling, sounds like you feel disrespected. We were not socialized to be able to articulate those things. But when it comes to respect, there is no one idea of what respect looks like. Each man will feel respect in a different way. For example, how my wife treats me may be different to how your wife treats you. And yet I may feel respected and you may feel respected. But if my wife does what your wife is doing to you, I may feel disrespected. So it's about understanding and knowing your partners. Respect, in my mind, I can break down Ephesians 5:33, and I give you the short version. It says, let every man love his wife and let every wife respect her husband. And I often say to people that when a man loves his wife, when he expresses that deep, genuine love to his wife, she feels respected. And when a woman respects her husband and gives honor to her husband as the man, and she doesn't pull him down, she doesn't make him feel less than a man, then he feels love. So loving a woman, she feels respected, and respecting a man, he feels love. And that's just a short answer as far as that text is concerned. So we need to understand that when we look at the whole idea of men feeling respected, I often say to a woman, you know, saying something negative about your husband, whether in private or public, is going to crush him more than not telling him that you don't love him. Because a man's image, a man's way of seeing things, or how he thinks he is seen in society, if that is challenged, he's going to feel less than a man. You know, it's not like you have to bow before me, but it's the way how you speak to me, it's the way how you treat me. You know, many years ago, many years ago, my wife said something to me in public, and it wasn't something really bad, but I felt this wasn't the place to say it. And when we came home, we had a long discussion about it. And then as we were talking, I said, I felt disrespected because of the image I had at that time of who I was. Now, let me break it down. I have many titles. They call me pastor, they call me reverend, they call me bishop, they call me many things. And I often say to the members of my church, when you speak to me, you have all rights to call me Derek. When you speak about me, you can give me all the titles that you want to give me. Now, there are people who call me pastor or reverend or any of these things, and they have no respect at all for me. They call me that because that's a title. And there are people who call me Derek, and they have utmost respect for me. So it's not about the title that people call you that gives you the respect. It's about how they feel towards you and how they treat you in times when they're in public, when they're in private, especially in marriages, especially in private. How people treat you is where you feel respected or disrespected. You're muted. You're muted.
This discussion is getting even more complicated for me because, you know, there's so much food that we have for thought now, and there's so many variations, so many flavors of what some men will view as disrespect as opposed to others. And I really want to come to Pastor Jamal, and I want to ask this question. Seeing that you have so many different flavors of respect among men, so many different flavors of wives who may speak against their husbands, and one husband will not feel disrespected in this scenario, while another does. I want you, Pastor Jamal, to give us a sense as to what does those two things, like character and principle. In other words, are there principle? Because one of the things that I realize is that a lot of times relationships break down because of differences. So you like strawberry ice cream, I like vanilla. And because you like strawberry ice cream, I might feel disrespected because you don't like the vanilla I like. What I want you to speak to us this evening about, Pastor Jamal, is what part does character and principles play? And if you're going to talk principles, I want to hear about the sources of these principles.
I would say in terms of character and principles, character is who you are when no one is looking, and your principles can be developed through, you know, your series of life, you know, based on the home that you came up in, what was passed on to you by your parents, what you gleaned from mentors, father figures, persons in society, within secondary school. So you begin to develop your different value system and goals to formulate your life based on all that you have experienced to the point where you are now. And sometimes we have to learn as young men how to value another person's opinion or another person's preference. And because you do not agree with me or because you like something different, it does not mean that you do not love me or you are disrespecting me. We agree to disagree. And sometimes, as young people would say, it's so easy to catch feelings. It's so easy to be in your feelings as a young man because sometimes you want persons to always go with you. You want the yes person. You want persons to believe in what you are doing, not realizing that they may have a different opinion. They may have a different belief system. And I believe in really developing symbiotic friendships, that you have to learn to appreciate another person's belief system or another person's opinion. My character is who I am when no one is looking. And if I understand who I am as a young man, I do not have to worry about compartmentalizing my life. So when persons see me at Kaya Ministries on Sunday morning, is the same young man they can see on Wednesday that playing football, or Friday night that would go and love to play a nice game of pool, or a young man that would do a cooking competition with Pastor Derek Ward and was unable to defeat him. So when persons see me, it's the same person. And if I work on my character, I always believe that you got to work on your character in private before you go in public. God makes the man before he makes the ministry. And if you're able to develop it somewhat in private, it becomes it becomes easier in public. So day by day as a young man, I have to work on me. I got to work on my likes. I got to work on my dislikes. And as Tony mentioned so clearly about emotional intelligence, as a young man, you have to learn how to develop your emotional intelligence, because you can be educated, you can be knowledgeable, you can have a title, but you're still lacking in the area of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence can be divided into 4 areas: me understanding me handling me understanding you, and me handling you. So when I am self-aware and I know who I am as a person, I'm able to handle myself better. Now that I understand Derek as an individual, I'm in a better frame of mind and a position to handle him better. So day by day, as young men, we have to learn how to develop ourselves. We have to understand who we are. Too often we find ourselves in an identity crisis. As a result, we're waiting on someone to bring that affirmation into our lives. And that situation begins to amplify if a young man never had a father figure in his life. I am one. My father was not present when I was growing up. We never had a bad relationship, but daddy just was not present. But I could not allow the absence of a father figure to now alter my principles or to change who I want to be in the future. What I had to do now is to glean from the principles that were passed on to me. I started to look at other men that I would like to be like, not be like them, but I would like to glean from them. So I think too often we tend to disadvantage ourselves, or we tend to focus on one bad happening in the past and allow that to change the course of our lives in the future. Because dad was not there, so what? You have to learn how to move on from a bad experience in your life and see how you can now better your principles, better your character, so that you can develop into the young man that you ought to be. So the absence of one thing should not define who you ought to be. But if that thing is absent in your life, you have to see, okay, how can I now acquire that thing into my life so that I can work on my character, work on the principles to becoming a better young man.
Pastor Jamal, I love what you just said, but the reality is that, and 2 things. In fact, before we go there, I just want to pass over to
Cornelius. Could I jump in very quickly?
Yes,
I want to apologize to this panel and to all the persons who are watching, but I definitely have to jump off now to attend to a crisis that is currently happening. They say pastoral duties never end, and I have to run off. I have to leave home. So please convey my apologies to everyone who is watching. To you guys, I'm so sorry to have to go, but I need to jump off and run.
Thank you very much, and travel safely.
Thank you.
All right.
God bless.
All right. Be safe, Derek.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Pastor Jamal, as I was saying, I love what you just said, but the truth of the matter is that a lot of men out there don't go to church.
Yeah.
A lot of men out there don't have it all together. In these discussions, I hear us talking about what we should do, and you're right. I agree with you 100%. But I want Tony now. I want you to tell me, Tony, what hope is there for a man out there who doesn't go to church, what hope is there? What can you say to a man out there who's listening to this program right now? What hope is there in terms of salvaging your emotions as a man with this disrespect you're feeling? Because let us be clear. A lot of times when we see domestic violence, it may not be the domestic violence that's the problem. It may just be the symptom. The problem may be the feeling of disrespect. So this topic is really a critical topic. I really want us to really not only address this topic from the perspective of men who are faith-based, but I want this topic to appeal to every single man out there. I want us to touch the hearts of every single man out there. So Tony, what would you say to a man out there who does not have all of everything together? What advice would you give him?
And they're not only out there, they're also in the church. I think Jamal began to walk down the road that you're now asking us to go on. And he's right. Oftentimes, much of what we consider to be offense is not intended. It has to do with our own processing, our own internal state. And so if you ask, what is the cause for hope? Is there a formula that I can apply that would allow me to get to a place in my life where I am able to engender the love, the respect, and the honor of those I share time and space with? The answer is yes, there is. It begins by taking responsibility for your thoughts, for your feelings, and for your behaviors. Getting to a place where you start blaming your parents, where you start blaming time, place, circumstance, the people in your lives for the things that go on in your head, the things that go on in your heart, and how you manifest in the earth. All right? You have to take responsibility for that. You have to say, I am my own man. I get to make my own decisions. I'm responsible for my thoughts, for my feelings, and for my actions. The next thing you have to do is to get to a place where you can actually define for yourself who you are. You must get to a place where you're no longer a victim of your past, whatever that is, but you decide the rest of my life, this is the person I desire to become. You must get a very clear picture of who that person is. We call that identity. You must get a firm sense of identity. Having defined that sense of identity, you then want to, as consistently as you can, be that person. We call that now your integrity. So identity, knowing who you are, living it, integrity, sets up what I call intimacy. And by intimacy, I mean, if people get to trust you, if people get to know that you're a person who keeps your word, if people get to know that you're a person who cares, who genuinely cares about others, then people begin to let their guard down. People become naked, tell you the truth. And that intimacy allows you to what I call speak into people's lives. That intimacy allows you to have the influence that you're looking for in people's lives. So we talk about and we teach 3 I's if we want to be effective as men. 1, know who you are. And if you have enough time, let me tell you how important that is. Jesus is 12 years old. He's in the temple. He's been separated from his parents. And when his mother connects with him, and she's all flustered, he says to her, don't you know it must be about my Father's business? At 12 years old, know who he is. We next pick up with the stories, and he's 30 and he's baptized, and a voice from heaven says, this is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased. His identity is affirmed. Next story says, and he's led away into the wilderness to be tempted. What is the basis of the temptations? If you be the Son. In other words, all the issues that we attend in life that we call temptations are really a test, and Jamal talked about it just now, of our character. Do we truly know who we are? Do we have a fixed sense of our purpose in the earth? Do we have a very clean, complete sense of what it really means to be a man? Do we have a truest picture in our minds? Most of us don't. As Jamal was saying just now, I grew up without a father. I've had to learn the hard way what it means to be a man. So you make a lot of mistakes along the way, and you injure a lot of people on that journey. But until you come to that firm, avowed sense about your purpose in the earth, about what it means to be a man, and then live it consistently, you cannot guarantee the respect, you cannot guarantee the honor, you can't even guarantee the love, and you will not be able to guarantee the love of the persons from whom you are expecting that love and respect, whether that be love of your partner, of your children, of your community, the place where you work. You can't experience those things if you don't first have that very fixed sense of self. Live with it, live with integrity, that is the character that Jamal talked about, and sustain it over time. So when scripture says that love is patient, that's not just patient with others, it's patient with yourself as you work through your growth. Just one other factor I'd like to bring to the conversation to help so that people have some new tools to work with. There's the concept of the emotional bank account. What that means is that as we're walking through life, I'm going to do things that are going to create deposits, much like a bank account, with you. So I come and I do business with you and I pay my bill on time. Yeah? I am courteous to you when I see you on the road. I'm helpful in some way. What I'm doing is I'm making emotional deposits. There are things that I am doing that are giving you good, strong, positive feelings about me. By the same token, from time to time, I may do something that upsets you. I may promise to meet you at a particular time and I don't do it, and you may be a little upset. We call those the withdrawals. Part of what allows us to sustain relationships, where there's high love, high trust, respect, honor, etc., is if we can make sure that as we engage each other, regardless of who the other person is, spouse, children, partner, friends, etc., can we engage in ways that over time, there is more emotional deposit in the account. So that when I do things that may injure you, like Derek said just now, his wife said something in a moment that he felt disrespected. If the emotional bank account of that relationship is deep enough, that 10-cent withdrawal, the relationship can sustain it. The relationship is not injured. So that when we get to a place of separation, when we get to a place of divorce, what it really means is that the bank account is empty. That the bank account can no longer sustain injury, can no longer sustain withdrawal.
So Tony, am I getting a sense from what you're saying that the disrespect that men may be experiencing may be their fault? Is that what I'm getting? Maybe that.
I would suggest that you step back. I'm not going to say fault. I would suggest that you step back and ask yourself, what part have I played in this? How have I contributed to this? I'd put it that way.
Okay. I listen to a lot of words that we use, and these are very profound words. I saw words like sense of self, character, principle, purpose, integrity, and I see these words being used. And again, these words come in many flavors. I want Pastor Jamal to give us a sense as to where we can go to get a sound understanding of these words, because there are people who might be into crime and their character is a criminal character. That's their aspiration. Like a person like you, Pastor Jamal, your character is faith-based. I want you to just for a couple of moments to give us a sense as to where a man that's listening right now, he may not be faith-based, or he may be faith-based. I want to give all men out there a sense as to where should we be looking. Is there a source that we can look to develop these proper character traits, to understand our purpose, to become more integritous, to function on principle? Pastor Jamal, talk to us.
Yeah, indeed. So my upbringing is definitely one of a godly upbringing. So everything that outflows from my perspective is based on the qualities I have developed as a Christian, as a young believer. But in terms of a young man that is out there that may not have a relationship with God, that may not have a desire to have a relationship with God, there's still things that he can do to become a good person. He can still glean from other men around him within the society, men that he looks up to, men that he would aspire to be like. So he may not be a Christian, he may not be in church, but there are persons that he can also look to, that he can even go to these men and glean from them, because association breeds transformation. Show me your friends and I will tell you who you are. If you're saying that you want to develop your character, you want to develop your integrity, you want to change, then you cannot associate and hang around with the persons who are not willing to change and who are not willing to develop their character. What you have to do now as a young man, you have to learn how to shift your circle. You got to be able now to look at different mentors, different persons that you, role models that you can look at to say, this person has something that I would like to develop in my life. Something simple as motivational speeches, that you're looking at a motivational speaker in terms of, someone that is able to outline to you qualities and characteristics of what a young man should be. So moving away the whole godly character and the Christian upbringing, as a young man, you still need to be aware of yourself, but it starts first of all with that identity, knowing who you are and being able to shift your surroundings. Acknowledge where you are at, learn how to forgive yourself, acknowledge that in order for you to grow, you have to know that the past has already occurred and you cannot change anything in your past. You cannot get angry and frustrated over and over. If I had a better mother, if I had a better father, if it was more richer, if I was living in the heights and the terrace and not in the ghetto, then maybe something good would amount out of my life. You have to, first of all, forgive yourself as a young man, forgive your parents, forgive your parental guidance, forgive whoever it was that may have caused you to be at a disadvantage right now. Forgive your past, understand it is behind you, and see now, okay, how can I now become a better person? What can I do now so that I can change, so that I can be a better father to my children? I did not like how my father was to me, but because he was that way to me, does not mean that I have to be that way now to my children. I can be the father that I always wanted for myself. So I would say to those young men out there who are listening and watching, first of all, you got to change your circle. You got to forgive yourself. You got to let go of the past and now see how you can now build to your new future.
Before I move from you, I want to ask you a point blank question, Pastor Jamal.
Yeah.
Do you think that men contribute by either deliberately or inadvertently? Do you think that men contribute to the disrespect they're getting in the home, both from their wives and their children? Because this issue of the respect isn't only between men and their wives, it's sometimes between men and their children. So do you believe that men contribute to that in their homes?
I would say to some extent, yes. You reap indeed what you sow, and I believe what you give out, you also receive as a man. So as a man, if you are sowing good seeds to your spouse, to your children, you are affirming them, you are loving them, you are supporting the household as much as possible. You're not perfect, you're going to make mistakes. But I believe that if you are doing your part, that the wife and the children will also come along to support you and do their part. I find too often when the man receives the disrespect in the household or not receiving the honor that he needs, can also be attributed to what he is contributing to that household. He may not be spending enough time with the children. He may not be giving enough resources to the home. And when the spouse and the children begin to see, okay, I'm not getting the quality time with daddy anymore, the wife realizes I'm not getting the financial resources that I once had. So all of a sudden, she begins to feel a strain. The children begin to feel a strain, and then they're gonna respond that way towards the man, respond that way towards daddy. But as a young man, a single young man, I realize that what you pour in is what you get out. What you reap indeed what you sow. And when in a household, let's give you my scenario, living with sisters, living with mothers, niece, from that point of view, I realize that when I can show love to my niece, when I can show love to my sisters, when I can wake up in the morning and decide to make breakfast for my mother or for a family member, I realize that it comes back. Not I am given to receive, but when I can do it out of a place of love, I realize it comes back naturally. To a point, to share a quick example, I did something special for my mom yesterday, and I woke up this morning and I saw a lovely breakfast. I said, the devil is a liar. God really working on her heart. I wanted to know what was happening. But then I begin to think, it's because of, the great deeds that I did yesterday. So it really shows that as a man, you're not serving your spouse and your children so that they can serve you, but you're doing it out of place of love. Because I love you, it is easy for me to respect you. Because I love you, it is easy for me to honor you. So I believe that love ought to be the root of it. It comes natural because I can respect you, but I don't have love for you. And you can see that a lot happening in the workplace, whereby persons would respect their employer, respect their supervisor, but they don't love the job, they don't love the employer, so there's a decrease now in productivity. But on the flip side, when you see someone, man, I love my job, I love the co-workers, I love my supervisor, you see an increase in productivity, how that person responds on the workplace. They don't mind staying additional hour to get the work done because it is coming from a place of love. So I believe it really has to stem from a place of love as a man, that if you love your household, you love your spouse, you love your children, that things would come natural. That is my belief system.
Thank you very much. That is very profound, Pastor Jamal, and that's a good way to. We're coming towards the end. We're running out of time, but I want to pose a question to Tony. Tony, this discussion this evening is about love, honor, respect, and we look at the men. But I want you, Tony, for just maybe a minute or so, because we're going to close off shortly. Speak to women. Tell the women out there that might be listening to this broadcast what they can do to help their man feel more respected, to help their husband feel more respected.
I'm going to bring it back to emotions again. I talked about the emotional bank account. Whenever we move, whenever we behave, whenever we act, we have two prime motivators in our lives: pain and pleasure. We move towards pleasure and we move away from pain. I don't care who you are. You are motivated by those two, pain and pleasure. So my advice to a woman, my advice to a man is, if you want the other person to move towards you, you have to, in some way, some form, however you do it, whatever circumstance, whatever context, whatever means, act, well, first of all, think, feel, and act in ways that make it easy for the other person to move towards you. Because they're deriving some pleasure, some feel good, to whatever way, in whatever way and to whatever degree, that to move towards you. So I'm not going to prescribe specific acts. All I'm going to say is, bear in mind that we either move towards, or emotions either move us towards, or emotions move us away from. So if I want you to come towards me, then I have to behave in ways, I have to do things that create that space where you are comfortable, where you feel safe, where you feel welcomed, where you feel wanted, where you feel respected. However you phrase it, I have to behave in ways that make it easy, comfortable, safe for you to move towards and for you to engage me. If you behave otherwise, if you put me down, if when we're speaking you don't listen, if you criticize, those are the kinds of behaviors that I'm going to move away from.
Tony, does that go for both? Does that go for both sexes?
Yes, because emotions don't know gender.
Okay.
We might manifest them differently, but emotions are gender neutral. So I repeat myself: we either move towards pleasure, or we move away from pain. If things are going to cause me pain, discomfort, disease, uncertainty, anxiety, fear, disrespect, if I'm experiencing any of those things, I'm going to move away. I'm going to keep my distance. If on the other hand, I'm experiencing fun, peace, joy, well-being, if I feel safe, if I feel heard, if I feel respected, I'm going to move towards those things, those persons.
Thank you very much, Tony. And you know what? We're all out of time. And I want to give you gentlemen I'm going to ask you to do the impossible. I'm going to ask you to take about 30 seconds and give me your closing statements about this topic and what hope is there, you think, for the family as far as the men are concerned and the levels of love, respect, and honor they're feeling or not feeling. Pastor Jamal, and then we're going to close off with you, Tony.
Sure.
Yep, indeed.
30 seconds.
Yeah, indeed. Once again, I want to thank you all for having me on Family Fest. I really did enjoy this time. And my closing words I would give to every young man that is out there is to let go of your past, learn your identity, develop who you were as a young man. Do not blame persons in terms of where you may find yourself, but understand that self-discovery is something that takes time. Understand your character is going to be developed overnight. It's not going to develop in 1 minute. It's going to take time for you to come into the fullness of who you are. But I believe in what you reap, indeed, is what you sow. So you got to understand that whatever you sow is indeed what you reap. So my encouragement to young men out there is to be respectful, show that love, show that honor, and understand indeed that it will be restored and it will be released onto you in return.
So I'm going to tie with Pastor Jamal, because that was the scripture that was in my mind. It says, whatsoever man sows, that shall he also reap. What does that mean? I have to know what I want, because if I want tomatoes, I can't sow corn.
Yeah.
If I want corn, I can't sow tomatoes. In other words, I have to determine what I want my life to be about. I have to determine what I want from my relationships. And once I know what I want to reap out there in the future, then I have to come back in here in the present and behave in the ways that are congruent, that align with the things that I say that I want. I can't behave in ways that sow distrust and expect to reap trust. So whatever I want from my partner, from my children, from my community, from my friends, from any space that I occupy, I know what I want, then I come back, and as I'm walking through the present, begin to behave in those kinds of ways. It is what we call engage in consequential thinking. Don't honor your emotions, but don't be guided by your emotions. Think, in spite of what I'm feeling, what is it that I want, and therefore how do I need to function, how do I need to behave, so as to be able to get that thing that I say that I want, that love, that respect, and that honor.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Pastor Jamal Midas. Thank you, Mr. Tony Olton. Thanks also to Derek Ward, to Pastor Derek Ward, who had to depart. I was not a panelist today, but I'm still going to put him with 30 seconds of admonition. I want to say to every man out there, you've had a well-prepared buffet from these gentlemen today. But I want to say to you that if you are at the crossroads in your marriage, in your relationships, that's with your children, your workmates, your wife, you may not be a Christian, you may not be a believer, you may not be faith-based. I want to recommend that you take up that manual called the Bible. Start to read it. Because even if you don't have a relationship with God, that manual I have found in the last 21 years has been the manual that has made the entire difference for me. Eventually, you would find that you get closer to God. But now, the beginning stage for you, what I recommend is that you start to spend time in the Word of God. I'm not asking you to make any commitment to anything. I'm just saying the Word of God has been a book that has made a difference for me, that has made a difference for a lot of people. So I want to say that it has been a pleasure bringing this discussion to you, hosting and moderating this discussion. I want to thank you, listeners, for listening, because this discussion is for you. And I also want to encourage you to tune in again tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock for another discussion from Family Fest, Barbados 2000. I thank you. My name is Cornelius Bartlett. And until we meet again, God bless.